Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us here for this webinar, Preparing for Hurricanes and Tropical Storms. We're going to take just a minute here as everybody is coming in from the waiting room and joining us, but we're glad that you are with us today. My name is Chris LeBrun. I'm the Manager of Marketing and Communication here at Adventist Risk Management. And as somebody who previously lived in Florida, I know how much thought and preparation you have probably put into hurricanes and tropical storms. If you live in that part of the world, it is something that is a serious risk, and we are going to look at that today. Our presentation is being brought to us by Angel Barrios. He's our account executive, and we'll introduce him and turn the time over to him in just a minute. But again, I want to go over a couple of housekeeping items here for you. This is a Zoom webinar. It's a little bit different than your regular Zoom meetings that you've been doing for the last year and a few months. We have a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. You can use that at any time to ask a question. We'll be answering those in that Q&A function feature. And throughout the webinar, we'll also kind of recap those at the end. So if you were watching the recording of this, you'll hear those questions at the end, and or if you miss it when the question is asked. But again, today is the official start of the Atlantic hurricane season, and so that's why we are bringing this webinar to you today. And again, we just thank you for partnering with Adventist Risk Management, for prioritizing the safety of your congregation, your school, your ministry. And with that, I think we have our people have come in now. Again, use the Q&A if you have questions throughout the presentation. But Angel, I'm going to turn the time over to you, and I'll come back at the end and we'll go through those questions, and you can give us the answers. So thank you very much. And Angel, time is yours.
Thank you, Chris, for all your support. Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to welcome everyone here today to our webinar on preparing for hurricanes and tropical storms. I know that there's several conferences from the southeast portion of the country, as well as some unions and conferences in the Caribbean as well. Would like to welcome you as well. As you all may be aware, and as has Chris stated here today, is the first day of hurricane season. And whether you are the safety officer for your conference or a ministry leader, our hope is that this webinar will help you be better prepared for the hurricane season. So again, if you have any questions, please click on the Q&A icon, and we will gladly answer your questions on the chat or at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, let's begin with this webinar this afternoon. Now, some of you may know who is Adventist Risk Management, but some of you may not be familiar with Adventist Risk Management. Adventist Risk Management is the official insurance and risk management company for the Seventh-day Adventist Church and Adventist ministries around the world. And we as an organization that protects the ministries of the church by recommending best practices to eliminate oversight that can lead to costly accident. And we are happy to partner with you in order to provide you with insurance and risk management solutions. Remember that our ministry is to protect your ministry. My name is Angel Barrios, account executive for Atlantic Union Conference in the North American Division, as well as the account executive for the Inter-American Division. And I will be your presenter this afternoon. Now let's talk about the duty of a risk manager and ministry leaders should use in order to have an effective loss control program. A risk manager focuses on protecting the property and assets of the organization. As risk managers and ministry leaders, we need to keep these three pillars of risk management in mind. As you are already aware, today's topic is on hurricane preparedness. So you must be able to identify hazards like, for example, a broken window. During a hurricane or tropical storm, a broken window can cause the room or building to be at risk of flooding. And not only that, but a broken window can provide an entrance for projectile objects due to high winds. Now that we have identified the risk of a broken window during a hurricane, the following pillar, as we can see on the screen, is to control that risk. Now, a way that this risk can be controlled is by, fixing that broken window before the storm occurs. And again, it's very simple risk control, but it's also very effective. Furthermore, there are, storm shutters that can be installed to minimize a loss from occurring as well. ARM has a self-inspection form that helps in the maintenance of your church or school. We actually have a self-inspection specifically for churches and one specifically for schools. With the help of a deacon, this risk identification and good risk control program can be done by doing an inspection of the building before a storm. And of course, addressing those hazards, whether that's with your church board or safety committee, your local conference or local church. Now, the key during the risk control pillar is to do what you can to avoid or minimize a loss from occurring. Now, when we move along to the last pillar, which is risk financing, this is where Adventist risk management comes in to provide coverage when these storms occur. I invite you to talk with your account executive as there may be specific deductibles for named storms. The 2020 hurricane season began early last year when Arthur formed on May 16th. As we can see, it was a very extremely active season that, quickly went through the predetermined list of 21 names, ending with Wilford on September 18. And then for only a second time in history, the Greek alphabet was actually used for the remainder of the season, with Alpha forming on September 18th. The last storm during the 2020 season was actually Tetha, being the 29th named storm of the Atlantic season. And all of this information, it can actually be found on NOAA website. You'll be able to find all of this information. And so what did the hurricane losses during the 2020 season look like? Well, last year, there were some very devastating losses around the church. And this is what the numbers look like. As we can see, in 2020, there was a total of almost $1.5 million that was paid specifically on hurricane named storm losses, with a total of 63 claims. And this amount is actually subject to change, as there are several claims that are still open and are still being processed by our examiners. And of course, this number will be subject to change at a much higher amount for the 2020 lost history. We spoke about the losses during the 2020 season. Now that we know the claim losses and how devastating they were around our church, let's talk about having an effective emergency plan during the hurricane season. You may ask yourselves, how do I create an emergency plan? Your church or school's emergency plan should specify what conditions call for a cancellation of services or classes, and how you will notify members, staff, parents. For example, it may be necessary to send an email to all your members, or even post online that services have been canceled due to a storm. But if for some reason your church or school is actually used during a hurricane, make sure that the meeting spot for a hurricane is as low to the ground as possible. If your church or school has a basement, make sure that that is the meeting spot, as it is lower to the ground. For buildings without a basement, look for an internal room as far away from windows as possible. Keep in mind that it may be, the case that the local authorities will be evacuating people out of the most dangerous zones. It may also be necessary to think of alternative routes due to flooding, down trees, and washed out bridges that can force you to improvise your evacuation route. Be aware of other roads and highways that can take you to safety, and ensure to follow local jurisdiction guidelines. Also, make sure to assemble your emergency kit. This kit can be stored at your local church or school. Some of these essentials that an emergency kit should have is, for example, water. In general, you should be drinking between half an ounce to an ounce of water each day. For example, if you weigh, let's say, 150 pounds, that would be 75 to 150 ounces of water per day. Also, this emergency kit should have non-perishable snacks, blankets, phone chargers, toilet paper, paper towels, flashlights with extra batteries. Again, these are all essentials to have in an emergency kit. Also, it's also important to remember, if you are directed by local authorities to evacuate, do so immediately and do not wait. We are providing, important information here today, but it's also important to always follow local jurisdiction guidelines. Now, regardless of these predictions and adequate preparation, you should always take into consideration that it is a forecast, but what am I doing to be fully prepared? And so, what does the forecast for this year look like? Last year's record-breaking season serves as a reminder to all, residents in coastal regions or, areas that could be prone to inland flooding from rainfall, to be prepared for the 2021 hurricane season. These are the 21 Atlantic tropical cyclone names for this year. With hurricane season starting today, now is the time to be ready. The NOAA, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, has actually predicted yet another active season. And based on this update, a likely range of 13 to 20 named storms with winds of 39 miles per hour or higher are likely to happen, of which 6 to 10 could become hurricanes with winds of 74 miles per hour or higher, including 3 to 5 major hurricanes with a category 3, 4, or 5, and with winds of 111 miles per hour or higher are expected. As we can also see, here are also the season probabilities. Again, it's a 60% of above normal activity in the 21 hurricane season. It could be a 30% of near normal or a 10% below normal. So again, all of these are predictions, but again, as we can see, last year it was predicted a certain amount and it was well over that predicted amount. Now, to be ready for the hurricane season, make sure your church or school has a complete list of contents. A list of contents will help you when a claim is submitted, as it will be much easier to highlight the items that have been damaged. During the emergency planning section that we went over, how an emergency plan can be created. This plan is designed to keep you safe during a hurricane or tropical storm. And the same importance should be placed on keeping your church or school protected. And this can be done by the help of your local safety officer. If you have not done so already, it's important to appoint a safety officer at your local churches and schools, even at your conferences. It's ideal for a person to do a self-inspection on the building during this year, and every year, to be honest, as well. And assign that safety officer or someone to do an inspection of the building well in advance of the storm. It's important to also inspect all roofs, looking for leaks and loose shingles. You want to avoid roof leaks that can cause water damage to the building interior. And every year, our account executives give safety officer presentations in order to train them on their duties. So I encourage you to reach out to your account executive for more information. And keep in mind that the self-inspection can actually be found on our website. If you go to our website, adventistrisk.org, and you go to safety resources, you click on safety resources, there should be a drop-down menu. You should click on churches or schools, and then you should see the PDF that says church self-inspection, or if you click on schools, it should say school self-inspection. Something else to keep in mind is that a safety officer can help determine and establish written hurricane protective procedures. For example, using wooden planks on the doors can be a way to keep the storm out of your church. It can help prevent heavy winds from entering the building, as well as flood water, which can cause devastating damage to the property and contents of your churches and schools. So furthermore, to be ready, it becomes essential to acquire protective equipment. We spoke that using wooden planks can be helpful during a storm, but special attention should also be placed in acquiring protective equipment well in advance of the storm. Before the storm begins, people may be looking into buying sandbags, flashlights, something like duct tape, storm shutters, plywood, and other essential items. Most recently, the demand in gas, it increased around the country. So earlier this month, this is a personal story. I was actually low in gas and decided to get gas close to my neighborhood. As I was heading there, I noticed that there was a huge line to get gas. I needed gas, so I waited in line for about 1 hour and a half. And as soon as it was my turn, I noticed that the gas station had run out of gas. I was frustrated that I had waited, over an hour of my time to simply see a sign that said, "Sorry, we are out of gas." And this was it was a teaching moment for me, as it made me realize that supplies are in high demand when things need to be done, things need to be done well in advance. And when things are in need, shortages could happen. And can you imagine if you made a long line to buy some protective supplies for your church or school, to simply find out that supplies have run out? So during the hurricane season, supplies are likely to run out, and we must be well prepared in advance. Even if it takes, checking the status of the supplies every time you go to a local department store from time to time. Something else to keep in mind is that your church or school may need a generator, and it may be necessary to contact a professional who may be able to guide you on acquiring a generator for the size of your church. In a few, we will also be discussing generator safety as well. This is another topic that needs careful consideration. Insurance policies, they have special limits, exclusions, and deductibles as it pertains to named storm, or, in other words, hurricanes. So if you are, the risk manager for your conference, get familiar with your insurance policy, since it will help you understand your conference's coverage. For example, there may be a certain deductible percentage that needs to be applied, with a minimum and a maximum deductible. So I encourage you to talk with your account executive for further information in regards to your conference's insurance policy. Remember that, when you purchase a generator, it needs to be rated for the amount of power you will need. If you cannot determine the amount of power you will need, ask a licensed electrician to assist you. Portable generators can be used to operate equipment during power outages and power cuts. You want to use your generator and follow your manufacturer instructions and follow the safety tips to use your portable generator safely. So first, you want to make sure to store your generator indoors and pull it out when you need it. This will protect the generator from bad weather and keep it secured while it is not being used. Another tip is to use the generator outdoors, away from buildings, so that carbon monoxide gas does not build up or enter the building and cause carbon monoxide poisoning. As we already know, our body needs oxygen, and too much carbon monoxide can be very toxic for our bodies. Now, before starting your generator, check the fuel, the fluids, the air filter. You want to make sure that the generator circuit breaker is turned off and nothing is plugged into your generator while you are checking, the fuel, the fluids, and the air filter. Then you want to run your generator for several minutes to warm up, and then turn on the circuit breaker and connect devices to your generator according to your manufacturer's instructions. You never want to refuel your generator while it is running, since it can be a fire hazard. So make sure to turn it off and let it cool before you refuel your generator. Something else to keep in mind is that you want to keep a fire extinguisher that is rated for types of fire hazards near your generator. You want to inspect the fire extinguisher annually and keep an up-to-date inspection tag fastened to each fire extinguisher showing the annual inspection was completed. Fire extinguishers tend to be a protective element that is not maintained very often. So, make sure that there is an annual inspection on your fire extinguishers. You also want to inspect your generator regularly. ARM has season maintenance forms to help you, to help the safety officer on proper maintenance. But even though that is the case, you want to make sure it includes a generator maintenance in your seasonal maintenance schedule as well. Furthermore, you want to store fuel in approved fuel containers where children cannot have access to them. As we all are aware, children tend to be very curious, and special attention should be placed when they are near these generators. Now let's transition now on how to prepare before the storm. The information shared will include on how to prepare the exterior and interior of your church or school building before the storm. Before the storm, you want to make sure that you strengthen your churches and schools. Keep in mind that you should always follow local jurisdiction guidelines, but these are some of the basic guidelines for hurricane preparedness. Now, what can you do to prepare your buildings before the storm? Well, you need a plan. Proverbs 15:22 states, "Plans fall for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed." And as safety officers or risk managers of your local conferences and local churches and schools, effective planning will help minimize a loss from occurring. So it's important to be well prepared and have a plan. For example, as we can see on the screen, make sure that you check the drains and gutters and downspouts. You want to make sure that they are clear and able to drain off the heavy rain. Clogged roof drains could cause the roof to collapse from weight accumulated water or cause damage to the interior of the building. So this is something that needs to be done urgently before the storm starts, and also well in advance. You may also want to anchor and secure loose objects, loose items such as antennas, dumpsters, potted plants, which may be damaged during strong winds. So they should be secured. Something else to keep in mind is that windows and doors should be protected. You should probably consider investing on permanent storm shutters if your churches or schools are areas prone to hurricanes. These shutters can be very costly, but the protection that they provide is a great benefit. If you are unable to install storm shutters, there's always the option to use 1/2-inch marine plywood as well. As we spoke earlier, make sure that these are bought well in advance, as they can be sold out very quickly. Also ensure that plywood is boarded on the windows correctly, as they can fly out as projectiles causing injuries. There are several how-to videos on YouTube that will teach you how to install plywood on your windows. If for some reason storm shutters or plywood is not possible, hurricane fabric can also be installed on the windows. You should think of hurricane fabric as a piece of bouncy fabric, kind of like a trampoline, that pretty much stretches over your window, and it deflects, flying storm debris. So this deflective barrier is a popular alternative to plywood because it's much easier to install and remove, but it doesn't provide the maximum protection like plywood or storm shutters. Please also keep in mind that with hurricanes and tropical storms, flooding can still occur. So make sure to keep sandbags on hand to prevent floodwater from entering the building. You want to secure the first floor doorways against floodwaters with sandbags or heavy plastic sheeting and duct tape. And these sandbags can be purchased at your local department store. Now, you also always want to look to keep proper maintenance on the exterior of your building. I have been to, churches where debris is on the backside of the church, which can be a problem during the hurricane season. You also want to trim branches of surrounding trees away from buildings and remove any dead limbs that can cause damage to the building when the hurricane strikes. So it's also a good idea to use the services of a professional to do this, as it is much safer to do it that way. Now, we have discussed how to prepare the exterior of your building before the storm, and now we will discuss how to prepare the interior part of your building. The interior part of your building may be filled with small loose objects, which is why all desks and tabletops should be cleared. You may need to box these objects or place them in desk drawers or storage cabinets. Any loose papers, books, I don't know, some people might have some hanging plants. These are items that can easily be damaged, and they need to be stored properly. Furthermore, there may be some pictures and plaques that are hanging from the walls and windows as well. You might have actually some important documents like college diplomas as well, or other important information hanging from your walls. And these items can be projected across the room should wind get into the building. So make sure to take them down and store them on storage cabinets as well. Important documents, they may need to be stored in higher cabinets where it will be more difficult for floodwater to damage them and reach them. So these are documents, important documents that should be placed on higher cabinets to avoid floodwater damage. You may also need to relocate files, boxes, computers, office machines, and other equipment to the innermost portion of the building. Now, these items may be of more importance, and moving them to the most inner part of the building will provide the most protection. So that's also something to keep in mind. Also, you want to look to disconnect all electrical appliances and equipment like copiers and projectors, and wrap them in large plastic bags to protect against water damage. Earlier in the presentation, we discussed that it is important to identify broken windows that can cause damage during a hurricane. If all your church and school windows are not broken, that's good news. But make sure to close them before the storm, as that can also lead to damaging winds and water to enter the building. And if flooding is expected, you want to unplug all unnecessary electronic devices and monitor the situation. You may need to avoid turning off the power of the refrigerator if the church or school is going to be used during the hurricane. Even though that is the case, if emergency officials instruct you to turn off your electricity during a hurricane, you will need to turn it off. And something else to keep in mind is to lock all doors. The exterior walls, doors, and windows are the protective shell of your building. And if the shell is broken during a hurricane, high winds can enter and put pressure on the roof and walls and cause very serious damages to the building. And this is why it's important to lock all doors. So we spoke about, what to do to be prepared before the storm. Now, what do we do after the storm? You want to wait until your area is declared safe before returning to the property. You want to, if, as you can see on the screen, it could be the case where your church building may look like that after a hurricane. And, as you can see, the roof shingles, the roof, they're loose. So, when you're going to go inspect the property, you want to carefully go there and wear a hard hat if possible. And again, you want to go there as soon as it is safe to do so. So we discussed how to prepare the exterior and interior part of your building before the storm. Now let's focus on, what to do after the storm has passed. After the storm, it's a good idea to survey the site for hazards, for example. Looking for example, live wires, loose wires, or even low-hanging wires, including utility wires. It could be telephone or cable lines sagging or being low to the ground. That could be in contact with an energized power line, making it more likely for an electrocution to occur. So stay away from these wires if you see them, but make sure that these wires are reported to your local authorities when you find them. Also, make sure to allow licensed professionals to turn on utilities. If there was flooding, which can cause utilities to be damaged, it can be dangerous for someone who is not a professional to turn on the utilities. So before restoring service, check all utilities and call your appropriate company with questions. Most importantly, pictures need to be taken as soon as the storm has passed and it is safe to do so. You want to wait until your area is declared safe before returning to the property. And we will talk more about the claim process in the next couple of slides. Now, during this time after the storm, you also want to put special attention on protecting the property to prevent further damages or even theft, for example. In the Caribbean, or even in some parts of the southeast region of the country, after a hurricane passes, there tends to be rain showers that follow and can cause further water damage to exposed buildings. I remember visiting some of the churches in the Caribbean that were damaged by hurricanes, and it was good to see tarps being placed on, areas that were exposed. But that was not always the case. There was some churches that, the exposed area was exposed and there was not a tarp put over them. So it's important to keep that in mind to protect your building from further damage. Now, if authorities have declared it is safe to travel, make sure to visit the church or school and do what is necessary to prevent further damage. Remember that, desperate circumstances can create desperate decisions like theft. If you have valuable items of your church and school that are exposed in the open, make sure that you move them to a secure place where it is not likely to be stolen. So how do you file a claim and what is the process is a question that is usually asked. As we can see on the screen, the claim form, can actually be obtained in our website as well. You go to adventistrisk.org and you go to the section that says insurance in our website. There should be a drop-down menu with all the different coverages. You click on property, and then there should be another icon that says claim forms. And then there should be a PDF link there that when you click on it, it should automatically show you the PDF version of a claim form. Now, there is a 4-step claim process, which consists of filling out the claim, investigation, result, and the payment. So number one, filing the claim. A claim can be filed with ARM. You just need to make sure you have provided as much as information as possible and work with the claims examiner if he or she needs further information. Ensure to provide all required information as quickly as possible and verify that the contact information you provided is current. In the investigation, which is the next step, the claims examiner, often with the help of an on-site adjuster, conducts the investigation process. For a normal property claim, it takes about 24 to 48 hours for an adjuster to be assigned to a new claim. And then it takes about 7 days for the adjuster to visit the site. After the site visit, it will take about 14 days for the adjuster to provide either a first or final report. And again, that is all going to depend on the extent of the damages. And after the examiner reviews the report, that typically takes 14 days as well. And that means that for a property loss, it can take up to 45 days if you add everything up to process a claim. Now, for a catastrophic loss like a hurricane, it could take up to 90 days or more, depending on the extent of the loss. So it's important to provide as much information as possible and provide all the information that the claims examiner asks, so that that claim can be processed as soon as possible. And after that's the investigation phase, it moves along to the result phase. When the investigation is complete, the claims examiner will relate the results to you if you are the designated contact person. The results, it may be that the claim is accepted, partially paid, or denied. And this is determined again by the terms of the insurance policy, like the deductible, for example. And then you get to the next phase, which is the payment. Adventist Risk Management will issue a payment for the loss. For property losses in the North American division, the payment goes to the insured, which is the conference. And for those in the Inter-American division, the payment goes to the union. So make sure that you do not wait to file your claim. Provide as much information as you can. Do not delay in filling your claim form and sending it over to us, because if you are waiting on additional information, that tends to be the case sometimes, where some people tend to wait. You don't want to wait. You want to send us the claim form if that's all you have, in order for our claims department to set up the claim as soon as possible. You have the duty to protect your property. If you have a situation where the damage from a loss may cause additional risk or damage, it is important to mitigate the loss. For example, contacting a water mitigation company as soon as possible to avoid further damage to the property is something that is done in order to protect your property. And also, something else that you receive when you send your claim to us is that the claims department issues an acknowledgement letter for each claim received. And this letter includes, the name and contact information of the claims examiner. You may contact the claims examiner to check on the status of your claim. If you have not received an acknowledgement letter, you can contact claims, as you can see on the screen, claims@adventistrisk.org, or you can contact your account executive. And you also have the contact information for our claims department. But when you file a claim, you want to send it directly to claims@adventistrisk.org. Again, we want you to stay connected. You need to follow local news on radio or television. There's additional resources on our website, adventistrisk.org. We actually have a hurricane packet that will help you be prepared for this hurricane season. The hurricane packet actually already has the claim form attached to it, with a picture of your account executive, depending on what conference and union you're from. I also invite you to visit ready.gov, which has very important information as well. And here, to conclude, we have our subscriptions e-newsletter. If you have a phone, I invite you to take a picture. If you have not subscribed to our solutions newsletter yet, I invite you to do so. There's articles that come out bi-weekly. It could be on child protection. It could be on hurricane preparedness. Just many different topics come out, and I encourage you to subscribe. We can't avoid hurricanes and tropical storms. And as Christians, we know that, times will only get harder. And I hope that the information received today was helpful in order to, make a difference during a hurricane. Remember, plans are not effective without effective planning. So with that being said, I would like to open now the time for some questions. Chris will be joining me here today to facilitate the questions.
Yeah, again, if you joined us later, you can use the Q&A feature on the bottom of your Zoom screen to ask those questions. It's sort of a text interaction, and we'll answer those live right here on the webinar. But something that you mentioned, Angel, just sort of struck me. I mean, there's a lot of planning that goes into excuse me, preparing for this, and hurricanes have a way of, there's a lot of buildup. Excuse me. There's a lot of buildup. We know that they're coming. We can definitely use that time effectively to plan.
Right.
And making the most of that probably means having a plan already in place, so that we can just put the wheels in motion and begin boarding up the windows, or having the tree limbs down at the beginning of the season. I mean, those are things that can be done ahead of time. You don't want to wait until the last minute to do those, because everybody's going to be trying to get their own house in order, so to say.
Right. And it's not like a fire, for example, where a fire occurs, it's sudden, right? So you don't know when it happens. With a hurricane, you have the time to be, preparing, planning, effective planning in order to be prepared when the time comes. So that is something that is important to note.
Yeah, we ARM offers a lot of safety drills for those more immediate, emergent situations like fire, like an active shooter or something like that. You're probably not going to be sitting in church on Sabbath if a hurricane is scheduled to hit your congregation.
Right.
It's not going to pop up on you like a tornado will. So it's very, very easy to plan for that. Again, following those seasonal maintenance plans and being prepared in that sense is really important, because it takes care of all of those things that you were talking about. So I have not seen any questions pop up. Again, the good thing is, if you live in an area that is affected by hurricanes, you probably have dealt with them in the past. Again, it's just important to think about it. I know when I lived in Florida, again, it was something that my family and I discussed. We had a plan for what we would do as individuals, as a family, but that plan needs to extend to the church, to the school, to the other ministry organizations, so that there is the planning there. And I think that's what you were trying to cover today. I appreciate you doing that. Again, if you have any further questions, please contact your account executive at ARM through the conference, and we are more than happy to continue the conversation, continue to provide resources. I tried to link several of the things that Angel was referencing in our chat feature in the Zoom today, but you can also find those at adventistrisk.org, and go to the Safety Resources tab, and then look under church or school, whichever organization you represent. But with that, Angel, if any final words that you want to say, or?
No, thank you again for joining us here today. Taking some time out of your busy schedule to join us here. And again, remember, you can have a plan, but if you don't effectively plan and actually execute, the plan can fall apart. So make sure to take some time to whether you're a conference, make sure to go over that hurricane packet, implement a lot of the things that are listed there, and also share this information with your local churches, which are also in need of something like this. And also, if you have any questions, again, Chris mentioned it, reach out to your account executive if you have any further questions.
Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you on a future webinar from Adventist Risk Management. Have a wonderful afternoon. God bless.